Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today, Masechtas Kiddushin daf Mem Vav. We're going to begin on Mem Vav Amud Aleph, the third line from the top. Itmar. Ketanish niskat sheshlo das aviyah. So, as we've been learning the past couple of daf, when it comes to a daughter who is under the age of 12, she really needs her father's consent. But what happens in this situation where there was a Kiddushin without the father's consent? So, Omer Rav, Bain he, we're going to be focusing on those words, she, as well as the father, are able to say that this is not an acceptable marriage. And of course, the Chiddush is, she's the one that accepted the Kiddushin, but nonetheless, now she could always back up. No, only he can, only the father. So Rav Huna poses the following question to Rav Asi. Some say it was Chiyah bar Rav or Rav Asi, but nonetheless they're asking the question directly toward Rav Asi. How could Rav Asi say that only the father, not her? After all, the pasuk says Ima'in Yima'in Aviyah. It says if the father refuses. Now, why does it have this double language? Ainli El Aviyah Hiyatzumunayin Tamalamar Ima'in Yima'in Mikol Makoim. So we see Beferish that there's this statement that she also has the ability to protest. So how could you disagree with that? So Rav, lo tezel basef. Don't go after the behind. Don't do something which is obviously not the correct answer. You can answer kagain shepita shlo l'shum ishus. Perhaps we're talking about a situation where he was mafata this girl without the sake of ishus. But if she was mikabel the Kiddushin, maybe she can't refuse them afterwards. Pita shelo l'shum ishus, crow boy, understand. Why do you need a pasuk? Obviously, there's no need to even deal with it because it wasn't even Kiddushin. So what are you talking about? Why need a pasuk for that? So I'm not going to be Yitzchak Goimer. The reason why we have this pasuk to say shemishalim kanas kemafuta, that he still has to pay kanas just like a normal situation of oinus mafata. Says Rashi, dechima akva ihi nami mishalim kanas. Even when she backs out, so he also has to pay the kanas. Kedin mafuta shetola kosav kanasa b'mein ha'ab. Even though the pasuk, when it comes to the dinning of oinus mafata, where the father has the right to be able to say, I don't want my daughter to marry this guy, so the din is, the father is the one who's mentioned in that pasuk. So the fact that she can refuse, the din is, she also receives oinus mafata. The pasuk says, Mahor yimharena lo leisha, about providing a dowry, shesricha hemedi kedushin. We're talking about a situation of Kiddushin. V'im pitul shomishus Kiddushin lomali. Now, if the pasuk over there is talking about it was done l'shem ishus, so then why do you need a Kiddushin? Why would we say that she needs a Kiddushin? We still need Kiddushin to be able to mention it's the father's consent. Okay, let's see the next Mishnah. It says the Masnisin, Isha. Person says to a woman, his skachli but tamarazu, I want to marry you, and I'm such a romantic guy, I'm going to give you dates. But he doesn't stop there. He says, with this date. Then he says, skachli bazu, marry me with this date. The fact that he said all these different statements with this one and this date, it's really separating them. And therefore, the din is each one. You have to at least have one of them which has a amount of a shavar pruta. Says Rashi, the kivandi armor hiskachi. Since he kept saying that language of Kiddushin separately, kol chad v'chad havi Kiddushin b'api nafshayu. Each Kiddushin stands on its own. However, says the Mishnah, bezu. So in this situation, he didn't say the word hiskachi each time. He just said this, and this. So, according to this opinion, we're going to see there's numerous opinions in the Gemara, that in this situation he holds that the din is a good Kiddushin just as long as all of them combined. And then the Mishnah concludes, let's say she's eating them while these dates are being given to her, and the Gemara is going to explain which case are we talking about, the Reish, the Seva. And one of them has to be with the Sheva Pruta. The Gemara is going to explain that. All right, let's see the Gemara. Man Tana Hiskachi, we had this before. Who's the Tana that says, in order to make everything separated, you actually have to say a lashon of Kiddushin each time? Rab Shimon Hidiyamer Shemir Shvuah Chol Echad Echad. It's the same thing when it comes to the dinim of Shuas HaPikadain. And you have a bunch of people, Rashi says, it's more in Shavuos, Gabi Chamisha Taivanai. So 5 people are claiming that they have a Pikadon by you, and you say, I'm making a Shavuot to you, and you keep saying the language of Shavuot, so you're chayav on each one. If you would say, no, then you wouldn't be chayav on each one separate. So over here, it's only when the language is actually said of Kiddushin that they're separate. And the key word over here is chulu. It's actually going to be going on the last part of our Mishnah. Aheya. What's it going on? It says Rashi, kahaisai chelas. What is it referring to at the very end of our Mishnah, that she's eating these dates? Then the din is that it's necessary that at least each one separately are looked upon again on their own. And therefore, even if collectively they're a pruta, that's not enough. It has to be that at least one of them is a pruta. Ilema reisha. Are we talking about the reisha? What was the reisha? Where he said hiskachi, he separates them, and then she's eating them. So the question is, like, what's the chiddush? Either case, they're all separate. My ira chelas of hil menachas nami. The hiskachi libezu kaimer. So it can't be talking about the reisha, because the reisha already is saying that in all situations, even if he would take the dates and put them literally on a table, and she didn't touch them, they're all considered to be separate. So it doesn't matter if she's eating them, so why does eating them matter? El Aseifa. It's coming to tell us the Seifa that says Rashi, the Chashiva le Klala Kaimer. That our Seifa of our Mishnah, well, the middle case, if you will, is talking about a situation where he said Bezu, and he said that they're all combined. Okay, they only combine if they're on the table. But if she's eating them, they don't combine. Now, if I feel with Kamaisa, is it true that even the first one, or if the second one is worth a Sheva Pruta, even though, let's say, the last one is not worth a Sheva Pruta, it's still a good Kiddushin? Bahamilvahi, but this is like a loan, says Rashi. Kivan de Kiddushin lo nigmur ad shekablim kulam. The Kiddushin isn't until she accepts all of them. Vikvar achla as rishayna, she already ate the first one. Kaidim shetikna oisa b'kedushaha, before she was kaina. He was kaina her. Havi bezuri shana milva gaba. So the first one is like a loan. You cannot be mekadosh b'milva. So how do we understand this? So Omer Rabbi Yochanan. Hari shulchan, v'hari basar, v'hari sakin. We have everything here. We have a nice table, we have food, we have a knife. Ve'enu echol, but we don't have what to eat. We don't have anyone like to eat. In other words, we have a Mishnah, but we don't understand how to explain it. So Rabbi Shmuel Diamar Tevalu Oyom Reisha. Let's really go back to the Reisha. So the question is, if it's talking about the Reisha, where he said hiskachi, that each one is separate, so then what's the difference if she ate them, even if it was on the table? V'lo boy karmer. The Mishnah is a loma boy. Loma boy benachas, if they're sitting on the table, obviously the ika sheba pruta in ilolo. You would then we say that we have to find one which is worth a sheba pruta. Avoy chelas, we hear the fact that she's eating them. Hoyel umikarva hanyasa. Maybe even if the date is less than a sheba pruta, because she's getting hana by eating them. Ema gamer makni nafshe kamash mulan. So that's the chiddush. That even if everyone is looked upon separately, but the point is that when it comes to her eating them, because she's getting hana by eating them, maybe the din is different, and even pachas of sheva pruta works. Okay, we've had this svara elsewhere, this havamin, I should say. Really, we're talking about the seifa. The problem is, how about the problem of a milva? So umay adshei bachas mehen sheva pruta adshei bachroina sheva pruta. You're right. It has to be that the last one is a sheva pruta. Fine, because the first one's, again, it's comparable to like a milva. So therefore, when it says, it means that the last one has to be a Shemer Bruto. So Amarava Shmamina, Ravami, so we can understand from Ravami plus three things. Shmamina, Mekadesh Bil Milva and Kadeshes, which we said before, that if you're Mekadesh woman with a loan, it doesn't work, first of all. Shmamina Mekadesh Bil Milva Pruta Daita Pruta. Here, since the first date is like a milva, and the last one is Kiddushin, so we say if you're Mekadesh a woman with loans and a pruta, basically in the same moments, daita pruta, her intention is on the pruta, and therefore that's the reason why it works. As Rashi, that is long, if the last one is a pruta, that's a good Kiddushin. Even though in fact it's true, the first one was a loan. So we say milva upruta daita prut, and that's why it's a good Kiddushin as we continue to memva mibes. Ushmamina, the third thing that we derive here is mois ba'alma chayzun, money returns. What does that mean? Says Rashi, kol Kiddushin, sheni Kiddushin. If let's say you tried to make Kaddish woman but it didn't work out, lo yamrinan mois matana. We don't say it's a gift. El pikadain, it's considered to be like a safekeeping on her behalf. The chayzer, and then she has to return it. V'hainu de kari lal hachlei chelos rishayna milva. That's why we said the first one is a loan. Kivan de achaltoi v'leisnehu b'shas gemar Kiddushin. Let's say she ate them and she wasn't around at the end. For the last one, lo b'kadeshes behen. So it's not a Kiddushin. V'habilu kepikadain she'achalto v'isavin milva b'achila. T'chi armin mois ba'alma matana. When we say sometimes in general that money is a gift, the ilu gomer Kiddushin lo boy ulhadrinhu, that does not have to be returned. Hash the gomer lav makadosh b'milvahu. A matana nami lo yahavi the ha'almanas Kiddushin nitnu v'gomer devara. Because the whole reason why he was doing this was al tanai to be makadosher. So if it wasn't going to work out, he wasn't giving it as a gift. Okay. Itmar. And on this reminds us of the following famous machlokas. Hamakadosh achaisai. The person is Makadesh's sister. Now, as we're going to see, the language of the Gemara, everyone knows you cannot be Makadesh your sister. It's nothing. You cannot marry your sister. So why did you do it then? So Rabbi Omer Mois Chayzrin, the money goes back. Shmuel Omer Mois Matan. Actually, it's a gift. So Rabbi Omer Mois Chayzrin, why does the man get his money back? Because Adam Yodea Shein Kiddushin Taisin Ba'chaisai. Everyone knows you can't marry your sister. But Gamar Nasl should be cuddling. And therefore, what he was doing was he was just having her hold on to his money. Therefore, when he wants it back, he gets it back. So, V'lei should be cuddling. So why didn't he ask her just to hold on to it? Sabrilo Makabla. He thought maybe she wouldn't have accepted it that way. That she maybe wouldn't want to do a favor. He gave it to her in this way, Har Mikudeshesly, and obviously that doesn't work. And therefore she has to give it back. Shmuel Sabar Mois Matana. It's actually a gift. Adam Yodashin Kiddushin Taisim B'chaisa, for the same svara. A man knows that he can't marry his sister. However, therefore, why did he give it? It must be V'gamanas L'Shul Matana gives a gift. V'leim L'Shul Matana Sabar Ksifla Milsa. She may have been embarrassed. Namely, she doesn't like accepting gifts. So he gave it to her in this unusual way, so she was able to get the money. And once she got the money, he walked away, and that was it. He doesn't want it back. So Mesev Ravina. Ravina asked the following question. Hamafresh chalasai kemach enu chala megezel biad koyin. A person is mafresh as chala in the state of while it is still kemach, still flour. So that is not challah. That's not the way a person is supposed to separate challah. And as Rashi says, the chsev reishis arisai seichem, that it must actually be dough. You can't separate challah while it's in its raw form of flour. And therefore it's also gezel biad koyin. If you don't actually return it back to the original person, it's gezel. In other words, the kohen doesn't have a right to it because it's not his. So he has to give it back. So, Mamai gezel biad kohen. Why do we say it's gezel in the hands of the kohen? Nema, why don't we say Adam Yodeh Shein Mafrishin Chal Kemach I'm not sure if this is as obvious as marrying your sister, but maybe then it was, that everyone knows you can't separate challah while it's still flour. But Nasal Hashem Matana, he was just giving it to the kohen as a gift. So maybe this is a raya that when you do things which everyone knows, it's not l'shem matana. No, shani hasan nafik churba minei. Over here, even though it may be true that normally it's not, normally would say it's v'nasal l'shem matana, but if you give it to him as a gift, then a chorba, something detrimental, something terrible can end up happening, and therefore the Rabbanan needed to say you must give this flour back. Zimna de Israel kohen pachas machamish rivayim kemach. Let's say the kohen has less than the prescribed amount, which is 5 quarters of flour. Bahai olishle bahadi hadadi, and he ends up mixing this together with that. Now viksavar niskana isasai. He already thinks because he was receiving this the kohen received this challah, which is not challah, it's just the flour, that he doesn't. It's like doesn't count. It's not part of the cheshbon to reach the minimum amount of chamish remoyim kemach. So therefore, he thought, it's not a problem. I don't have to be mafresh, because he has to be a mafresh himself too. Yasel lativla. And it turns out he's going to end up eating tevel, because he may not know, which is kind of interesting to say, because although we just said everyone knows it, so probably the Kohen, who that's his business of taking challah, that he should certainly know that it's not chal. So what is the reason for this concern? Mar says you're right, but Yodeya v'en Yodeya, they know but they don't know. Yodeya shein mafreshin challah kemach. They do know in general that a person's not supposed to separate challah while it's still in the raw form of flour. They know Yodeya, but they don't know the savar tamayu. What's the whole reason why it doesn't work? Ma'is mishum tircha de koyin. It's just because we just don't want to be matirach de koyin. Now tircha de koyin achilte. I'm Michael. We only give it to the koyin as challah, as dough, not as raw kemach, so it's edible for the kohen right away. But this kohen was fine accepting the challah this way. So in his mind, he's like, okay, I know you're not supposed to do it this way, but it's okay. I'm Michael. But it's the chal, it's still chal. Of course, it's not, and therefore that's the problem. Where it says, okay, but to have a truma, so let's say it is truma, v'lo te'achel, but you should not eat it. Actually, before we go fight, look at this Rashi. The zimni isla kohen pachas mekashir. V'hai kemach nasun lo Yisrael l'shem chala, v'ksaver sheshem chala alav, ve'enu chayev b'chala. Let's start l'hashem es hashir. Okay. So why don't we say it's a truma? So go back to the Gemara. Why don't we just say, okay, it works, but he has to separate from another place? And we do find that we do say that this is a requirement elsewhere, such as Mil Tanan. After all, didn't we learn in Yavamas elsewhere? Min hanokuf al she'eno nokuf. So you have 2 pots. One is perforated, and one is eno nokuf. One is not perforated. So the one that's perforated, we say that it's getting all its nutrients from the ground, and therefore it's chayim b'deraisa. However, it's enu nokov, so Ikar Din, it really isn't getting its nutrients from the ground because there's no hole connecting it to the ground. So what do? You're not really supposed to separate one from the other because they have 2 different levels of chiyuv. So we say, if you did that, truma, it still is good, even though you took mina nokov al she'enu nokov. We just say, take it from somewhere else. So why do we tell him the same thing over here? Why do we say that he has to return the flour? Why do we say it works, but he just has to separate someone else? The answer is, betray money tzayis, b'chad manu tzayis. Interesting svara. Says Rashi, 2 kalim, he'll listen to you. Nokav she'enu nokav. You have 2 vessels, one with a hole and without one. Shnei kalim him. V'chi amrit l'koyin chazor. When you tell the koyin to return it, v'havrish aleha, and to be mafresh, shetevahu shaloi chal shem truma leha sayislach. And you say, you know what, it didn't work, so you have to redo it. He'll listen to you. Because he sees, oh yeah, they're 2 separate things. One has a hole, one does not have a hole. So maybe one doesn't work for the other one. B'chad mana Kegan chalos kemach. You have the flour. Shenitl kemach hanoiser sham. They took from the flour over there. Ki amri lo l'koyin enu chala. If you say what you gave was nothing, chazer return it b'hafresh shaleha and be mafresh l'tzayisloch. They're not going to listen to you. That's the reason why he needs to return it. So it's harder to be able to fathom or understand why should I have to do it again. By two, you can say, okay, there's maybe there's different dinim over here. One's a hole, one's not a hole. But over here, a person may not will maybe not think that. They may not listen to us. It's very interesting. Sometimes we can make a gezerah. We have to be careful when making a gezerah. When you say something, you have to make sure that's something that's logical that people are going to accept. Doesn't make any difference. The Kohen will listen to you. The Kohen, even if it's the case of the flour. So what's the problem? Just tell him to separate somewhere else. The problem is the Israel will think the rest of his flour is good, and now he can eat the rest of his food. So to avoid this, we require it to be given back. So that's the problem. The Kohen will listen to you. The Kohen's a good guy. The problem over here is since he's separated the challah already, and in this situation, and the Kohen will maybe separate from somewhere else, the Yisrael doesn't know that. The Yisrael just knows that he separated his challah, thinking that he did a good job. Now he could eat the rest of the food, but it's still not good because it was tevel. He didn't do it properly. Okay, that's the problem. Question 6. Let's just see one more piece. Maybe let's just finish to the Amud. But didn't we say Adam Yodei Shein Mafrishin Chal Kemach? I thought we said that a person knows that you can't separate challah like this. So what does Israel should know this? No Yodei V'Eno Yodei. He knows, but he doesn't know. Yodei Shein Mafrishin Chal Kemach. He knows he's not supposed to do it that way. Or V'Eno Yodei, he doesn't understand the severed time of my. What's the reason why he shouldn't do it? Mishum Tirch Dekoyin. Tirch Dekoyin Kibul Alei. He accepted it from me, right? So he accepted it in his flour. So I guess it works. Which it doesn't work. So the Gemara says, okay, so v'tehavi truma v'yachsa v'yitrum. Why don't we say it is a truma, but nonetheless v'yachsa v'yitrum? Why don't we say that he has to do it again? Milu tanan, and the other way around. Mish'enu nokav al nokav. If you separate it from something which does not have a hole to something which does have a hole, truma v'yachsa v'yitrum. So when it comes to that, we say that we'll tell you just do it again. So why don't we just tell him to do it again? No. Because al-kimna betray manit sayis b'chad monolith sayis. We already mentioned that they'll listen over there because it's two different pots, but not by one. Not one thing. V'ot sayis, you think he's not going to listen to you? But tanan. Hatarim kishus v'nim samara. Let's say a person separates with gourds or cucumbers, and he finds that they're bitter. Avtiach v'nim saruach. He separates melons. It does truma. They're considered to be like spoiled. Truma v'yachsa v'yitrum. So we see that a person will be, even if it's one thing, he will do it again. He'll listen. Yeah, but no shani hasam. It's different over there. The Midrash said truma malihi. The reason why is because even if he doesn't do it, at the end of the day, it was a truma. So there's no takala that's going to come. There's no chorba that's going to come. How do we see that separating from good and bad, it still works? How do we know if a person is tiring from bad onto good, that's still good? Shenemar v'osisol of chait b'harimchem eschelboy. You shouldn't lift up and have a sin when you do the separating of the fats. So if you didn't accomplish anything, so what's the sin? You didn't do anything. So So we see from here it actually does work. So therefore it's like this. When it comes to this case of a person who separates kishus and finds it's bitter, avtiach finds it's rotten, spoiled. So a person, Me'ikar Adin, did separate the truma. So therefore, since it works, interestingly enough, even if he doesn't listen to us, it's not the end of the world because it's still Me'ikar Adin, truma was done. He's not going to be eating tevel. So we can tell him to do it again, and hopefully he'll listen, and then they'll be fine. However, in the case of the flour, it's mamish nothing. It's not a proper hafrasha. And since it's not a proper hafrasha, the problem is if he separates it and gave it to the Kohen that way, and if he doesn't get it back, he's going to think that actually it was good, and therefore he'll end up eating tevel. Okay, we're going to stop here. We haven't seen any questions, so let's see a few of them now. Hamafresh chalasu kemach enu chala v'gezel b'yad kohen. My gezel b'yad kohen. Why is it stealing? V'hari l'shmuel adam yodeh shein mafrishin chala kemach. A person knows. So again, maybe he knows, but he doesn't understand the reason why. He thinks the reason is because of tircha de kohen. So he said, okay, I'm moichel. So therefore, the kohen may actually think that he could accept it. 6b. B'may shna b'mafresh mechiv al patur the truma v'yachs of yitroim. How come when it came to chiv al patur that it's a truma, we say truma v'yachs of yitrom? Says because that's treimani, because there's two kalim, so they may listen to you because there's two separate things. So because of that, they may be confused, like, there's all these intricate dinim between this and this. They look different, so I'm going to listen to the rabbis. However, if you just see one thing, as I understand, I separated. What's the problem? Okay. TA 13. Harmel isha skachli b'tumorzu b'zu v'oiso chelos b'rishen rishayna omer rabami enu kadeshes ad shehe ba'achrayna shavar pruta elu gimel devarim loimdim mizeh. Very good, great question. You would think that would be popping up, and in fact it is. So what are the three things? What is the Shema Minat Klas? TA 13. So we learn out from this statement, first of all, Hamikadish B'milva is Ein Mikudeshes. We learned Hamikadish B'milva Pruta Daita Pruta, and therefore it is a good Kiddushin, even though you also gave a Milva, but since the last one was a Pruta, that's good enough. And then continuing on to the next daf, TA 13, the third thing is Shema Mina Mois Ba'al Machayizrin, that when a person gives money and it doesn't work, then you have to give that money back. TB 14. Madin hamois. Pretty straightforward. So the answer is the machlokas. One says it's a matana, the other one says it's a pikada, an adkan.